Russian President Vladimir Putin accused of playing politics with the lives of orphans after saying that he's going to sign a controversial ban on adoptions by any American. Well, the State Department just minutes ago saying the idea of risking the cases of Russian children, some of whom would find their adoptions frozen, is both misguided and unfair to the kids involved. Foreign adoptions have already been suspended following the case of the American woman Tori Hansen. Remember her? She adopted a young Russian boy and later sent him back on a one-way flight to Moscow with a note pinned on his shirt. The 7-year-old was placed in a plane alone. That note from Hansen saying the boy was violent and her family feared for their safety. Russia's foreign minister at the time called the boy's return the last straw after a string of foreign adoption failures in which children, some of them, were killed by their adopted parents. Joining me now, attorneys David Wohl and Janet Johnson. Good to see you both. David, let me start with you. You've worked in the juvenile justice system for the better part of a decade or two. So what's your take on this?
Well, Greg, you know, since 1999, 45,000 Russian kids have been adopted by American families. The vast majority of them are in great homes, loving homes. There have been a few cases of abuse and neglect, no question about it. But, Greg, this act by Putin is nothing short of an act of child abuse. It's reprehensible. These kids there are not enough adoptive homes in Russia to take care of these kids. That's why so many American homes have stepped in to fill that void. Now, there are about 46 adoptions in midstream. Bonding has already taken place between adoptive parents and the kids. And for that to be destroyed, Greg, I would hope there's an international tribunal, perhaps The Hague, that will intervene in this disastrous decision by Putin. It hurts the kids. It's nothing less than child abuse, and it needs to be reversed.
Janet, what do you think?
I think Putin's already given himself an out because he's basically been on record saying he has 1 year to change the agreement that the U.S. and Russia already have in place for these adoptions. So I think he's going to let these 46 go through so those children aren't left midstream. And then going forward, he's basically just reacting to an unrelated law saying that any war criminal from Russia can't own property in the U.S. I think they're going to find a way to smooth this over because it's a PR disaster for Putin.
Yeah, I would think so, and especially, David, since Russia has a real orphan problem on its hands.
Yeah, a massive one, Greg. And you know what? We covered this with Megyn Kelly a couple of years ago in Kelly's Court. And the woman who did send that child back, Miss Hansen, did do exactly what you said. Send a note pinned to his chest saying he's a psychotic kid, a violent kid. She can no longer take him. And that was a horrendous act of child abuse in and of itself. But since then, a court has ordered her to pay $150,000 in damages and support that young boy until he's 18. So there has been a remedy to that act of child abuse. Putin needs to acknowledge that and move on with this because you're only hurting the kids. And I suspect that it's possible, Jen's right. I mean, maybe he will reverse himself within the next year. But don't play politics with kids' lives.
Janet, explain the quid pro quo here a little bit more and the politics that's involved.
Right, and with Putin, you never know what the mindset is. I don't think that any of us can get inside his brain, but he's reacting to a law that was recently signed by the president saying that if somebody is a convicted war criminal in Russia, they can't own property. They have certain rights that they cannot exercise in the United States. He apparently was miffed about that, and in response is taking these children hostage, basically, and saying, okay, then you can't adopt, because Americans are utilizing Russian orphanages as ways to adopt children that they can't get in the United States. Yeah. He also, I think, was insulted and made a statement saying the standard of living in the U.S. shouldn't be a reason to let them adopt. Why don't we all just move to the United States if we're agreeing that it's better there? I don't think he wants to say that.
Yeah. All right.
Smacks of Cold War politics.
It does. It's retaliation,
right.
David, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, it sure is. I mean, there's no way you can get around that. He needs to put the lives of the kids first, and to use them as pawns, like Janet said, is reprehensible. But the bottom line is, Greg, I have seen adoptions fall apart. I've represented kids who've been in adoptive homes and say they do a background check after a year, and it turns out one of them is a convicted felon. And the devastation that happens to these kids when they fall out of an adoptive placement is irreparable. And so let's not let these 46 adoptions fall apart. Let them go through and then patch up whatever it takes on this quid pro quo nonsense and get this going, because this has been a tremendous adoptive relationship for the last 13 years.
All right. David Wohl, Janet Johnson, good to see you both. Thank you.
Thanks.
You bet, Greg.